Greetings, family. Welcome to the Grand Rising Collective. My name is Kayode, co-host, educator, and entrepreneur for 20 years. Grand Rising Collective's here is to cultivate greatness in ourselves and our community.
And my name is Kayode, co-host, educator, and entrepreneur for over 20 plus years. My contribution to Grand Rising Collective is to help cultivate that greatness in ourselves and the community through impactful discussions, seminars, and webinars with my co-host, Kayode.
Greetings, family. Welcome to another episode of the Grand Rising Collective podcast. We have a great guest for you all today. But before we get into that, I want you to recognize that we have our co-host, my partners in podcast. Kayode, say what's up to the people, and Shelly, say what's up to the people.
What's going on?
Hey, everybody.
So
Feeling good.
Yes, feeling good, feeling great. How are you? Yes.
Feeling good, feeling great. A little tired, but feeling good, feeling great.
All
I got a long day.
Indeed. So
I'm doing cheer today.
we're doing my.
We're doing cheer today. And then, trying to train her up right. So we're going to do cheer, and then we're doing cheer clinic. And then we're going to prepare ourselves for volleyball tomorrow.
Active lifestyle, you all. I'm telling you, active lifestyle. So before we get into it, we definitely want to make sure that you like, share, subscribe. If you haven't before, we've noticed that we have a lot of people watching, but you all don't have to subscribe. So click that button down below, subscribe button. I'm going to put it down there for you. So that way you know, subscribe, click, share, like it. And even if you don't like it, put a comment down below. We always try to improve. This is the Grand Rising Collective. We want to rise to the occasion. We want to present our best to you all. So make sure you do that. And we appreciate you all for sharing your time with us. So I want to get into the hot topic for today. There's a number of them. But first, I want to give a homage, because it would be remiss if I did not do so. Mr. Frankie Beverly and Mays, man. Like, rest in peace to Frankie Beverly, his legacy. I grew up on his music. I mean, I know I don't look that old. I mean, thank you, Black don't crack. But, hey, I grew up on his music. We grew up on his music. And I just want to know if anybody had anything to just briefly share about Frankie Beverly.
But I can't say I grew up on his music.
Yeah.
But I know there was a lot of sampling of their music.
Mm-hmm.
And then most recently, I think Beyonce did the rendition, Before I Let You Go, that, took over in this newer generation, if you will, or my generation, I'm not really sure, but her great stories. And upon hearing it, we were overseas, and it really hit a lot of people in a lot of different ways. So Toshi, our special guest, what was your favorite song if you listen to that group?
Yes.
I did.
And welcome.
I don't know if I have a favorite song, but I do have a story. Frankie Beverly, a couple of years ago, I'd say about 6-7 years ago, did a small, intimate show at an event. It was an all-white event. I had been invited. I didn't look at the advertisement. My girlfriend said, let's go. So let's go. We met in Manhattan. So I get off the train. She says, what do you have on? And I said, what do you mean, what do I have on? You don't like what I have to wear? And she goes, it's an all-white party. I have green and yellow on. I don't even know what colors I had on. I had all kind of colors on. Mm-hmm. And then Frankie Beverly comes out. He's every single person at the small sitting was in white. Every person except me. And I just felt like the odd person out the bunch. I looked so weird. People were looking at me like, where'd you pick her up from? Because this is an all-white party. But he came out and he sang. Oh, it was so beautiful. And I'm 6'1", so he was so small, but I got to meet him. I got to meet him. Yeah, I got to shake his hand and meet him. It was just a lovely event, really lovely event. It was a small sitting, but that's what I have about Frankie Beverly.
Awesome. And thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you as our special guest.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Yeah. So, real quick, I kind of mentioned this already, but I don't mean to change the format, but I don't know if the audience knows who Toshi is. And I think if you know who she is, and then she could give, share her experience, which she already did, would give more context. But nonetheless, with that said, I just remember Frankie Beverly, before I let go. The club when that come on. So that's my memory of Frankie Beverly.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a befitting tribute, Kayode. Hey, Kayode. No, for real. I mean, it does that. That's the way it's supposed to, man. I mean, the brother, he really did it to the end. And his legacy, man, and his feeling of love and appreciation and community, it brings people together, and the feel and the vibe at the barbecues, at the concerts, at the shows, at the venues.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. So and again, family, again, we have a special guest, but I wanted to start off with that because it encompasses everything. But Toshi Felton, our special guest for today, tech entrepreneur, world traveler, based here in New York City. She has her own organization, company, NexGen Tech Corps, that she's been doing and creating and creating a lot of trailblazers as far as Blacks in tech, and also in the urban community in tech, but not just the urban community, but globally, her connections in regard to industry and moving the needle forward for opportunities for us in this field. So again, Toshi, welcome. And
Thank you.
And we appreciate you coming on our platform. So we tend to start off with like some hot topics and things like that. And I want to get your take on briefly, before we go into your background. I want to get your take on one hot topic recently with the dynamic of college and education is concerned, because we're in the educational space, and I want to get your take on that in regards to the enrollment of certain schools and the lack of enrollment of certain schools, because with your industry, I'm sure you have degrees and certifications and education on this thing, but in regard to current day, people are saying, school's not as important, college is not important. If you're going into the tech space, it's not as, I guess, necessary to get a degree. And I wanted to get your first take on that.
Oh, thanks. That's a big one right out the gate.
Yeah.
So I can understand that statement from a lot of individuals. Their surroundings potentially, right? They're looking at potentially those who did go to college and still are maybe low income, mid income, not rich and wealthy and famous, and this is what's being branded to be the norm, right? That's your goal, right? That's what's being branded to be individuals' goals, be rich and famous, etc. I do feel like there is a space for college for everyone, but I also believe that there are trade schools and certifications that are applicable for you to be successful just as well as a degree. I find that my audience, my target audience, the members who I really want to impact in the urban or less served neighborhoods, I feel that they have a big, especially this generation, they have a big platform to get it done without college, right? There are these social media platforms that are showing them they're getting it done without college, right? There are individuals in their surrounding, they're showing them that they're getting it done without college. But I feel like with college and your degrees and your certifications, you're not just looking at today, right? So when you're looking at certifications, you're looking at college degrees, you're looking at tomorrow. You're not looking at just for today. And that's what I try to brand into my audience mindset is, yes, tech is for you, but tech is just not for today. Tech is everlasting. Tech is not going anywhere. Tech is for your career. Tech is for life. I had some individuals who, they were in music. They wanted to be in the music industry. I said, hey, guess what? Tech can finance that, right? So tech is a space where you can truly either love it passionately or use it to go towards your financial freedom or your passionate career in life. So I feel like whether it's a college degree or a certification, We all need to look at what's important for ourselves individually and not be boxed in saying, oh, you need to have this or you need to have that. Yes, they're great to have in regards to management level. So, and I communicate this to my engineers. I say, okay, great, you have this certification. Guess what? If you like to be a manager someday and put the rack and stack down, right? Put the configurations down, you're gonna have to, in order for you to actually manage the next level of individuals, you're gonna have to get a degree. Because at the end of the day, you're certified that you can actually touch the equipment. You have nothing that says you can actually manage and lead people. And that's where that degree comes in at. So I try to still encourage them. Yes, your certification is great for now, but once you want to sit down and sit behind a desk and start managing people and leading individuals, you're going to need that degree. So I do encourage both.
Okay. Wow. And Shelly, I know you being with a question, I'm sure. No.
Well, while Shelly's thinking, I'll be happy to interject with that. If I can. Can I? And I'll be brief so I can land my plane and not take so long. So, Toshi, I agree with your statement on that in regards to technology today. And young people feel, hey, I don't need to go to the archaic way like my parents did, because long story short, 40 years in the corporation don't really profit anything. I don't want to be like my parents and working 40 years and get a gold-plated pen and a certificate and all that other stuff. I could do YouTube and make millions of dollars like the other young people, not knowing the history and the background and the context behind it. So to your point, I think that's very valid. But I also think what needs to be mentioned, and Shelly definitely might have a comment on this when I say, is I also done some research as I teach young people how college is no longer the college it used to be back in the days. College back in the day was a institution that encouraged young people to think creatively, right? To think outside the box. Now college has become a business. It's a private-owned business that makes money off the backs of students in regards to tuition. And there's this big thing now in society now where it says, well, has been for a couple of years now, that tuition is eclipsing home mortgage rates. And there's been a study that says now colleges are so concerned with their bottom line in reference to building up the houses around the college, the facilities and all that to draw more students in. But as far as giving students a qualified college education, they can care less about that. They're more concerned about their pockets. So to your point, I think it's very good that in terms of your question, Cal, that there needs to be an alternative message pushed out just as aggressive as the message that's been pushed out over all these years in the industrial complex, that, yeah, a 4-year college is good for specific areas, like a doctor, a psychologist, and that nature. That is qualified education. But a lot of these other, you don't need, a trade school is just as good. We need more young people learning trades, carpentry and stuff like that, plumbing and things of that nature. And then into catering their inherent skill sets so we can create more leaders, which is what we talked about in our meetings in the past. So, I jumped all over the place with that, but Toshi, I just wanted to, add more to what you shared with us in regards to where college actually falls in. And I think that's what contributes to the lack of enrollment. And particularly what I heard in the news, the lack of enrollment of black males, but black males in particular.
Yeah.
Shelly, you ain't got nothing to say to that? Yo, all right, Cal, I'm on the roll.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, I think there, well, you did. You took us around 285 and back on 20. And now we downtown under the Brooklyn Bridge. Because there's a lot to what you said that I can comment on. I think as we talk about Blacks in tech and training up the next generation in tech, I do think that there is some validity to the idea that there's different pathways, right, into that space, depending on what is the end game for that particular individuals. There is some, comments about college is, regardless if it's, as we would say, in the HBCU arena, PWIs, predominantly white institutions, or at minority serving institutions, there is this push to incorporate technology into a lot of the majors. To your point about the lack of Black males enrolling in school, the lack of just Black students across the board enrolling in schools. Now, we have seen an increase in more Black females enrolling. in schools, but we also see that number dropping as students progress and they get more involved and more exposed to technology fields and industries. So I think, with that being said, one thing that I did want to ask Toshi was, how did you get into this space, being a Black woman? And I think, Kyle kind of mentioned, and Katie mentioned, like, over the time, it has always been Black women. We go get our degrees and then, we go into for-profit organizations, right? That's always been the narrative, at least that was pushed to my generation, you doctor, lawyer, business person, but not necessarily technology way back when. So how did you get into the space? Like, what drew you there? And then, if you can highlight kind of like what drew you to start in your own organization, that would be amazing.
Okay. Thank you for the question. I was actually not interested in tech at all. I had no interest in technology whatsoever. At the time, my husband had graduated college and he started working with IBM. I was in hotel management. I went to NYU for hotel management. I finished out there for hotel management college in Manhattan, and September 11th happened. Technically, literally, it took away my job. I was shocked. I was in the industry for about 12 years before September 11th happened, and we were doing really well financially, and I no longer had an income in New York. There was no such thing as going to another hotel because, we were all hurting and suffering in Manhattan. So therefore, I had to find a new industry. I had to adapt quickly. I had bills and finances and children. I could not sit around and say, I need another degree in 4 years for me to move forward. That wasn't going to happen. So therefore, I went to Queens College. I went to Workforce One actually first, and I said, "This is the money that I'm making. I need something similar or close to this money." They said, "You're in Workforce One." So and then there's no such thing as hotel industry anymore for me to go to. So I took a class. They said either you can go into medical or you can go into tech. And I said, let's try tech. My husband was in tech. So I tried tech. I took this course for about 8 months. Because I wasn't directly impacted by the September 11 events, I did have FEMA support for about a year. And that allowed me for 8 months to train and study. I trained all day, I trained all night, and I got my certification. And it just took off from there. I never looked back. Nice. I did not know I would love tech the way I do now. I did not know I would love training the way I do now. However, it definitely was an avenue that I think I was meant for. I think I was just waiting on it, right? I was like, let me put you in this area first and get you really sorted out with people in difficult situations, and then take that over to tech. I think that's how God set that up for me.
I like it.
Yeah, so that was basically what got me started, is the removal of my primary and me jumping into technology. I believe that for me, it was more about diving in deep towards something that was very, very, very much so unknown. I knew nothing about tech. I mean, excuse me, in the moment, I knew what I had to do technically for my position. But that was pretty much it. If it was anything outside of that, I wasn't into tech. So I think for me, that's what started me or led me in the direction of technology. Now, while there, I pretty much learned what I needed to learn. It was very difficult. I know this is one of the areas where we were going to talk about today, but it was very difficult 25 years ago when I started in technology. There was no one who looked like me. And I'm going to be honest, I probably got a lot of job interviews because my name is Japanese, right? So I did not have a space where I saw other individuals who looked like me, or I was mentored in this space. My mentor actually at the time, a Pacific Asian woman, she took me under her wing and she mentored me into training. However, my very, very first class that I took ever was a Black woman, and she inspired me. And I'll tell you a story about that a little bit later. I never saw anyone Black in technology. Again, that's just my space, right? That's because my world it's the smallest I allowed it to be, right? So I was like, wow, my technology trainer is a Black woman. I was excited. I was very excited. So I dwelled into it heavily because I saw someone who looked like me. And that's where I believe what led me again towards opening NexGen Tech Corps. Again, having someone who looked like me was very inspirational. Now, long story short, what I did not know was she was never really into tech. She had taken a technical training class. She finished her technical training class, and her very first class to teach what she trained on was my class.
Wow.
So I never knew she was not in the field of technology, right? I just assumed that because she was now a trainer. Long story shorter, we actually became friends about 10 years later. She told me in confidence, she said, Toshi, I'm gonna tell you, every day you came to class, I cringed. I said, what do you mean? I thought I was a great student. She said, no, you would ask me the most difficult questions that I sometimes did not have the answer to, because she just came out of training. She took one class and then she started training on what she got certified in. And I was connecting dots, right? Because I was in the real world. Not technically, but I could see past the black and white text that was on the paper, and I started connecting the dots and asking these really difficult questions. She said there was one question she actually never answered, and 10 years later she came and she said, oh my gosh, like, you would ask the most difficult questions as a new student company, NexGen Tech Corps, in my Cisco Networking Academy.
Wow. Wow. That is a unique, amazing story. I mean, just we've talked about this on a platform before, like the opportunities when you're ready to receive them, but also being in those spaces and just what they call serendipitous, just like serendipitous moments that happen along the way that lead you to where you're at right now. Like, that's just amazing. Like that was a first class, but from your POV, it was like, wow, I have a Black tech instructor who look like me. Like, I can relate a little bit. So it helped your journey a lot more than it would have. But I see that you had that support along the way. And one of my questions from what you stated, and thank you for sharing that with us, is that, was it difficult to find those mentors, or because a lot of times with our youth and even with us as adults, we are scared to ask for help because we don't want to seem dumb. We don't want to seem out of place, out of pocket. So Toshi, was it difficult for you to find those mentors, or have those mentors support you during your changing careers, your pivot, your shifting careers with tech?
That's a great question, because I didn't know I needed a mentor. I'm a child of an orphan. I think I spoke to you about this. My mother aged out of orphanage, and I think she had an 8th grade education. We lived very modest and humble. But my mother always told me, if she told me one day, she said, look around. And she made me do a 360 and looked around. And she said, if you never want to live like this, get your education. So my mother was an 8th grade education, being an orphan, not having a mother, not having grandparents. She always put that understanding that education will help you and guide you, no matter what it is. You need to be educated in order for you to be successful and well. And this is something she always prided herself with her children of having. So therefore, I believe my passion for learning, my passion for educating, even as a young individual, I used to educate my older siblings and older cousins in different areas of education while they were struggling in high school. And I always seemed to do well. So when you say finding a mentor, I didn't know I needed a mentor. I knew I was going knee deep, head deep, I was going deep into technology. I was going to give it absolutely 100% of what I needed to give it, day after day, training, studying, and I had a support system. My support system understood. I will not be talking to you when I get home. My support system knew that I'm doing this 100% until I get certified, and then I need another 100% to get employed in this. So I put them to the side, and I dove head in. My mentor sought me out, as I mentioned, and mentioned to me, hey, you did extremely well, and I got a lot of feedback from you in class. I want to mentor you. And I just jumped at the opportunity. Unfortunately for me, I didn't know I needed a mentor, but today I do not allow my engineers to leave out of my establishment without a mentor. I do establish at the end of every certification a mentor-mentee, but they are happy to do so successfully. Very advantageous.
That's beautiful.
Awesome. A lot of Black women, it's funny you said that, because a lot of Black women don't necessarily seek out mentors in a lot of professions. There's just been this recent conversation, or I shouldn't even say recent. It's been maybe 5 years. I attended a panel, and we were talking about Black women not receiving the support and resources that other nationalities receive in different business industries. And that comment also came up that some Black women felt that, we just had to put our boots on and just figure out our way, or we were in situations where we just had to navigate through, even though there were other Black women who saw us struggle, did not know or wasn't aware to reach back. And so then the part of that conversation that really stood out was Black women don't necessarily need mentors as much as we need sponsors. We need individuals to open the doors for us, to validate us, if you will, or speak on our behalf in rooms and spaces that we're not necessarily accustomed to being in or showing up in. And so I think to that question, who opened the doors for you to really help you outside of this teacher as you started to move on in this space? Who were those individuals that opened those doors and became your sponsors?
My mentor, again, a Pacific Asian woman who had run the Cisco Academy. And she led me as my mentor for a long time. And after understanding what the mentor does, I was able to understand that I actually need different mentors for different areas of my industry. So my mentor, again, Ruby Shua, she opened the doors for me, and Alexis Greenwich, again, being a mentor of mine, started navigating me down the entrepreneurship avenue. Once I mentioned to her, hey, I want to start my own academy, she said, let's go, let's do it, let's get this done. And having a relationship with a lot of business individuals in the community that I wanted to open, her brother specifically had relations with the infrastructure portion of South Jamaica, Queens. He knew the businesses that were coming in. He knew how the area was going to be rezoned or gentrified, right? So he knew when it was coming in, and he advocated to make sure that my institution had a space. He always updated me on what was available, what could be split in regards to space. So her and her relationship with her brother, they really helped navigate the infrastructure portion of my school.
Very nice, very nice. Is there any, and I'm probably taking you to a big vision picture, but is there a big picture vision to go, come down to Atlanta, or go, into Louisiana? Like, what's the long-term big picture that you have?
There is. I once wanted, I spoke to someone specifically about being an HBCU, right? Again, I do have plans on broadening and creating sister organizations in in other areas for my
Awesome.
institution. I would like to be in a completely all technology training college, from drone technology to AI, ML, DS, everything that's coming moving forward. What I find, and again, you'll have in your areas, again, my training didn't just come from, let me leave the organization and let me go open my own institution. It came from me working for other training institutions, right? Other nonprofits, reputable. So you may have in Atlanta Per Scholas, you may have Empower, right? You may have all of those. I've worked for all of those institutions. So me having an understanding of their structure, how it works, that, I have all of those inner works. It's actually an individual in power who led me directly to open my own institution.
Very
She said
nice.
to me, when she said to me one day, she said, Toshi, you don't really follow the rules. And I said, well, I understand you want me to do X, Y, Z, but I'm doing that well. But I also believe we need to do ABC as well. And I'm not going to let my engineers leave here without knowing that. So if I have to sneak it in there and push it in there some way, somehow, that's what I'm going to do. She goes, you know what? You need your own school. And that statement was the lead to me opening my institution. I said, you know what? You're right. I do need my own school. And I opened my own institution.
I love it. I love it. It's funny. I was just talking to some people yesterday on the same lines. There's a school down in New Orleans called St. Augustine. And it's the only Black male school in the US. And their alumni are very invested and very involved. And they just received like this huge endowment. I think it was like $5 million from one of their graduates. And so here in Atlanta, there's a huge group of St. Augustine alum. And we were all talking, and very much like that, one of them said, I think I need to start that school here in Atlanta, because he's in the education system, and he's just like talking about there's it's a private school system here, but most Blacks keep their children in public schools, whereas in other spaces, most Blacks of affluence have their children in private schools. But what we found here in Georgia in terms of, conversations, the way that Black males are treated in the private schools. And oftentimes families of influence tend to pull their sons out and put them in public schools or magnet schools. And so we were talking about that and his frustration, and very much like you, how he, always going against the grain and developing all of these programs. And we were talking about, saying he was like, I think I need to start my own school. And his brother turned to him and said, brother, I think you need to start your own school. And so I think we find that's how entrepreneurship start, right? You get really frustrated with the system that you're in, and you're like, I keep presenting the problem to the people who I think can solve the problem, rather than look at ourselves as the solution to those problems. So, I think kudos to you for saying, let me be a part of the solution and not continue to, talk about the problem, but let me do something. So I think that's amazing. And, it's the era of the Black woman, as they say. So, I'm even more impressed by that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, I do too. No, it is amazing. And I want to add on to what Shelly is saying as far as like problem solving, because when we talk about like being entrepreneurs, being a business person, we're providing a service to the community. And I want you to kind of touch on that a little bit more with the problem solving aspect, because there's a whole bunch of problems, but there's a whole bunch of solutions, right? And with your corporation, your company, what problems do you think you're solving, or you're solving in creating, your organization? And also what you see as far as like certain, I guess, like typical problem solving, but also like what you've seen and noticed, particularly with your organization, in the students in the tech enthusiasts that you're serving and knowing and connecting with, like what problems are y'all seeing within the industry overall, and then specifically with your organization?
Okay, so thank you for the question.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll say in South Jamaica, Queens, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it definitely was in space. It is a space, especially 25 years ago, that is not, it wasn't very safe. It was riddled with drugs and prostitution, and the only thing I ever saw was Chinese restaurants and fat cat, right? So my South Jamaica area was not affluent for me to say, I want to stay here and I want to learn something. I had to come out of my community and go to someone else's community and be the odd man out in that community when I wanted to learn something. When I wanted to take up tech and train in tech, I went to a couple of different institutions. I went to one, again, Queens College, for my primary, but I've taken so many different classes. Again, I still could never take one in my community. So one of the first things that the problems that I'm trying to solve is let individuals, especially in that underserved community, know you don't have to come out of your community to be successful. You can say right here in your community, right in your own backyard. You don't have to spend $5, $10 to get to and from where you need to go. It's right here in your own backyard. So having something like this in the South Jamaica, Queens, which we don't have in that area, it's very important to me. I could have opened a school anywhere with less financial real estate debt than I am in South Jamaica, Queens, because the real estate over there is really high, especially now. But it was important for me for them to see. I have so many individuals now who walk past and say, wow, I never knew we had this here. And just to come in and say, oh, you do technical training? I never knew this was here. And, and I keep the doors open. Some of my alumni, we do some demo days. We come out just to show them, we're here. We're here for you. We're right here. The other thing that you asked about is what other doors that solutions, problems am I solving? The other problem that I'm solving is tech is for us, right? So many of us, and I have individuals come to my door and they'll ask me the silliest questions. They'll ask, is this hard? And I do look at them as, well, do you sometimes hear of some of the salaries of individuals who are in technology? She goes, yeah, I hear they're making great money. Well, if it didn't have a little bit of difficulty to it, it wouldn't be that cost. It wouldn't have that cost associated to it. So I tell them, yeah, it's a little difficult, but that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here to explain it to you, to connect the dots for you, which I think for a lot of our audience, my audience, my target audience, we really do need that in-person training. We need that person directly in front of us to connect those dots, to make it relative, right? To your everyday understanding. Like, so when you think of a computer, I relate it directly to a body, your anatomy, your skeleton, right? Because everything is connected, right? So, I mean, again, having that individual to be able to explain it to you or connect those dots, I believe for my audience, it's very well needed. So when I say tech is for us, I put them into a space where they have to understand we've done so much with so little, and we've come so far from so little. And we are successful in our own right over the years. There's nothing we can't do. So think about you going into space that wasn't even meant for you. Imagine what you can do in that space that wasn't meant for you at all. I mean, we are creative. We are so creative, again, because we come from a long avenue of doing so much with so little. So I also encourage them with that.
Toshi, I have a question. One trend right now that we're seeing is the AI revolution, if you will. We know that it's been around for, a long time, but now it's, being accessible to the masses, right? So having a tech school and working with individuals like us, how is AI fitting into your program? Because I know a lot of people are concerned, and we're seeing this, are losing their jobs to AI systems, right? And so how is that either impacting your school, or helping enrollment? Like what is that conversation like with your students with AI, and how are you keeping up with that AI trend?
Right. So actually, I just came back from a conference in Houston. I'm actually going back in November as well. Um, So I use AI, as you said. AI has been around for a very long time, and
Mhm.
everyone is using it and don't even know that they're
No, they
using it,
don't.
right?
Right, exactly.
Yep.
And that's typically what we find to be the truth of technology, right?
Mhm.
If it's finally given to us, it's already old, right?
Right.
When it's finally produced for the masses, we're already behind. And how
Mhm.
I'm using AI is, and I'll just take you back just a little bit, because you made a comment about losing jobs, et cetera.
Mhm.
So when you think of AI, you think of artificial intelligence, but the word automation also scares individuals, right?
Mhm.
Because when you automate and then things, again, jobs are lost or positions are taken away.
Yeah.
Um, so I am an automation engineer by in my 9 to 5, right?
Nice.
So I get hit all the time. No one wants to talk to me, right? No one wants to talk to me because I'm going to automate their job. Right? But at the end of the day, automation and AI, they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Um, I try to communicate to my engineers. Hardware is a piece of hardware. It's just a big paperweight without someone having to do something with it, right? So you are the intelligence behind
Mhm.
that hardware. That hardware can't do what you can make it do without
Right.
you. You are still the focus point on it. But here's the thing I find, and this is something as a business owner,
Mhm.
um, but even outside of a business owner, why wouldn't we want something to work a little bit more efficiently than
Mhm.
not? Right. So in
Mhm.
my business, I want it to be efficient. I like feedback. I'm a self reflecting individual. But even in your country, why wouldn't you want your country to be more efficient? So if I'm
Mhm.
thinking about how to solve problems and how to, and I do this, I have hackathons in my institution on a solving problem. Why wouldn't I say, well, what's the problem that we have the most and how can we solve it? And then I try to introduce AI into that.
Yeah.
Well, I want our representatives truly to represent us, right? They're
Mhm.
making decisions based on our behalf, but they don't allow us to know what those decisions are until they come into legislature, right?
Right.
How can I solve those problems? And then asking AI to step in and try to formulate questions that
Mhm.
potentially you have a problem. You may not have an outline on how to solve the problem, right? So
Mhm.
that's where AI comes in, right? It
Yeah.
comes in to try to give you a structural out a structural design on what your thought process is, right? And then you have to
Mhm.
consistently go in and tweak it, right? Because it's not going to have
Right.
the you put something in the AI, it's not going to actually have your true answer until you continue to tweak it. But that's just like college, right? And we'll
Mhm.
go back a little bit to the college platform where you're supposed to be taught how to think for yourselves
Yes.
and how to solve
Wow.
problems yourselves.
Mhm.
And the professor is meant to guide you in that space. Well, that's
Right.
exactly where AI, and I think when I think about AI, it's meant to help guide you. It's not meant to take over any jobs. It's not meant to transform you to stay home and then just everyone else or these things just
These
work for
things.
you.
Yes.
Yeah. It's meant to have you to use this thing to work for you, right?
Yes.
And I don't like when individuals get scared because at the end of the
Mhm.
day, although I do not gamble, but I've walked through a couple of casinos and walking through those casinos, every there's no such thing as a table anymore. Everything is digital. All the games are
Yep.
digital. All the
Yep.
slots. Well, who's fixing that? And then
Mhm.
if you incorporate AI into that, you'll start to understand more about the patrons that are in your space, right?
Mhm.
You'll
Yep.
start to ask questions about those patrons in your space. I have a new restaurant opening up next door to me. And I said to myself, well, there's one right down the block. And maybe this is just the way my mind thinks. I don't know. Maybe I'm an anomaly. But I said to myself, why would they open a store right here and they have one right down there? And I said to myself, analytics, right? There
Mhm.
was some analytics. There was something that was learned in that infrastructure that said there are individuals from this zip code over here that are frequenting this zip code. So it makes sense
Sense.
to
Yeah,
open one
exactly.
closer to them. And that's all that AI predict and learn, predict and learn. It can't predict without learning. Who is it learning from? It's learning from you. You are the data. Now, that being said, there are some really widespread vulnerabilities with those data, right? And when we look at 2050, not 2030, 2030 is a different ball game, but 2050, when we look at 2050, whoever owns the data runs the world, period. That's the way the world is moving. It's about data. You will no longer be able to logically, right? Not physically. You will no longer be able to say, here are my credentials, here's my social, here's my birth certificate, this is who I am. That's not how it's going to move moving forward. Moving forward, we're going to tell you who you are, because you've been giving us all this data for the last 25 years. You've been giving us on every platform, everything you touch, every phone call you make.
They've been
know who
collecting
you
it.
are. We know exactly who you are. So you can't fool us anymore. But is that a level of efficiency, right? Is that a level of understanding who is where and what? Now, that does borderline your privacy, right? So then that's where there's those gray areas of vulnerability where the big brother's always watching. They know what you're doing at all times. They know how you shop. They know, what you use your finances on, right? Because they have the data. Data mining is key. And that's a space where I think we need to get more into. We need to own data just as well as those who are preparing for us and preparing for our future are owning our data.
It's funny you said that about following us, because me and my friends are always talking. Most of us have iPhones, and I can I'm having a conversation with you and I can say, oh girl, I like that jewelry. And then next thing you know, we're opening up our app and it's a jewelry store popping up and following us. And it's like, how did they know that I was looking for this, right? And so we're always talking about things that follow us either in our emails or like in our Instagram. That vulnerability. My daughter, I'm doing a staycation with her, and she said, "Did you give the man your name?" And I was like, "What?" And she was like, "Because we learned in school today, you don't give your name to anybody because they can follow you." So it's funny. And I love what you said earlier about tech-splaining, because I think you did a great job at tech-splaining, the logic behind, if you will, AI. Before I go, I wanted to ask you, I know we're talking a lot about your entrepreneur spirit in your school, and you just kind of mentioned it also, like we need to start learning how to own that data. Are you teaching your students about entrepreneurship, like they're learning these great skill sets? So instead of them, obviously we want them to, leave and go work for somebody so they can understand the system, right? We always say that,
not.
right? But also, are you talking to them about, like, when you leave, are you thinking about entrepreneurship, thinking about owning your own? Like, what is that conversation like with your students? Instead of them, obviously, the tradition, you get your education and you go work for somebody else. Instead of doing that traditional pathway, you get your education, you get your certification, and you start your own. Like, what is that conversation like with your students?
Yeah, thank you for that question. That's a great question. I was going to bring it to the table today. I do it in two different avenues. One of the avenues are, I have a course that is a CompTIA A+ course. So CompTIA A+, pretty much a little bit of networking, a little bit of security, a little bit of desktop, right? But with that support, my organization does a free computer repair for the community. If you live in the community, you can bring in your computer to repair for free. If I'm hosting that CompTIA A+ course for that semester. And the reason why I say it that way is because, one, we have a set of equipment in the school, but when the individual gets certified and they go out in the real world, they're going to see a variety of different pieces of equipment. So that's a way for, one, the community to know that I'm there, right? They're like, wow, I can get it for free. It's completely free. Two, that when they bring the equipment in, that student now has to work on the equipment, right? And get it repaired with my oversight, obviously, because they're still students. at the end of the day. So they get to work on different variety of different pieces of equipment, which gives them exposure to. The third thing that happens at the end of that course or the end of that repair is a business card or a label gets put onto the laptop of that individual who actually worked on that piece of equipment. So now we
Nice.
hand that piece of equipment back to the individual. That individual now has that student or now technicians information. If something were to happen again, they know exactly who to contact because it's on the label on their equipment, and they've actually started their journey into entrepreneurship. They get a breakdown of exactly how to measure out costs for repairs, costs for support. We delve into business cards, printing business cards, just a small set of them for them initially when they leave. And then for those who are not in CompTIA A+, like my other engineers, we talk about startups. I communicate to them all the time. You're new, you're an engineer, yes, you're certified, but no one really wants you touching their equipment because you're so brand spanking new. I'm gonna be honest with you. Don't touch my stuff, okay? So I say, you're gonna get that. They're gonna look at you like, no, don't touch my stuff. I say, so what you need to do is contact startups, small startups, they need engineers, and you need a portfolio. Okay. You need that sponsor to say he did an amazing job. He came in, he gave his all. Look at what he did for us. We had a small Starbucks. He put it together flawlessly. It took him no time. We would have not been able to find. You need a portfolio. So I talked to my engineers a little different than my technicians because, again, not a lot of people are letting you walk in touching their routers and switches. You may babysit them for a little bit, but you're not even touch my stuff. So, and I know the feeling, I know the feeling because I used to be one of those baby engineers. So
I love it.
Yeah,
I can understand it. So yeah, I do encourage, and then we also have an entrepreneurial course. It's about 12 hours. So if they're really interested, I make them go through the course and they have a certification at the end of it. But outside of the black and white, I tell all of my engineers, yeah, go get your foot in the door. Sure. But make sure you understand you are not meant to work for somebody else's dream. You were meant to work your own dream. Understand that you need that experience. But the day you get your foot in the door and the day you no longer see that you are learning something from that institution, it's time for you to go. And you owe no one anything. If anything, they need you. Not saying you don't need a job or financial freedom.
Or as my godmother say, my benefits.
Okay. Let's not say you don't need that, but don't make that be your long term, because at the end of the day, you were never meant to work someone else's dream.